Guys, welcome to our third training session, all on form building and chatbot building. Now, this is not just about starting things from scratch, which you can absolutely start them from scratch if you really so desire, but this is also about being able to edit, maintain, make adjustments, pivot based on changes in your business, changes in the industry, etc. And so I'm hoping that this gives you guys a starting point, a basis to be able to understand how we put this together for you guys. And honestly, if there's enough of I guess, a desire after this, I probably will do it anyway, but there'll most likely be a part two. I have received some feedback to not go too much into detail. And I think if we can cover the first half, which is arguably the majority of what you guys would be using on the day to day, if you were going to be jumping into our builder, then I'd say that that covers off the main pieces, and we'll probably do like a smaller class, or maybe I'll just record something and present it on our channel so that you guys can see some of the more complex structures that we put together that you might actually find to be quite applicable in your business. So I want to thank everyone for being here. 22 people. I love that. That is so good. Honestly, if just one of you goes and edits this form rather than asking us, I'm a happy guy. But I want to make it very clear as well that this does not mean that you have to do it. We will always be here to support. I am a big advocate of equipping you guys, so please know that there's a balance here. We want to make sure that you've got the tools and resources, but we'll always be here. And of course, it's going to be quicker sometimes for you to do it, but we'll always make sure that we've got the ability to provide these solutions where possible. So that's the caveat that I want to kick off with. And the second caveat that I want to mention is everything that we're about to talk about is not touching on integration. So if you have anything about your form that integrates with your CRM, with a particular software, data goes out from Mystro and into something else, everything that we're going to talk about, you can technically do, but the caveat, the asterisk, is it may impact your integration. There are certain things that you can do and can't do to, I guess, protect that integration. Some of you have hard-coded back-end integration. Some of it's front end. So I would just suggest that if you want to take what we talk about today and apply it in your business, and you do have an integration of sorts, then please email me or the team at support@mystro.com.au, and we will provide you just a very basic, I guess, hey, here's what you can do and what you can't do, just as a general idea. So again, we're equipping you to be able to have a gander if you'd like. So let's kick off, shall we? I'd like to give you guys an early mark and see if we can punch it out. And I'd also like to make sure that we've got questions at the end. So if anyone has anything that they go, hey, can you touch on this? Or if you want to put something in the chat halfway through, I'm happy to pause and take questions as we go along. So can I confirm with everyone, can you see my screen? Can I just get some confirmation? Yes, beautiful. Thank you. So, Shane, are you meaning to put your hand up, or was that an accident? Might have been an accident. All right, we'll continue anyway. Just put a message in the chat, Shane, if you have a question. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is forms. All good, Shane. We're going to talk about forms. Because ultimately, if we're talking about forms or chatbots, the structure, the way we go about it is very, very similar. So what I've actually done is I put together a bit of a sandbox training form that we can use to show you each of the different elements. And I can show you, I guess, around the form in different sections, just so that you can understand how it impacts like email templates, notifications, that kind of thing. And I actually will be talking to Dimitri to actually allow this to be something that you guys can import into your accounts, so that you can actually not just play around with these things yourself, but as we do more updates, and you'll see that there aren't things in this form, but there will be. We've got some AI tools that we've been playing around with, and if you've ever been in the form, you've probably seen them and been too nervous to touch them. But having a way to showcase how you use them will be providing something like that. Again, with all of these training sessions, it's giving you guys resources. So if you want to add a form to your account, either one of our templates or a blank slate, if you just go to the left-hand side into apps. Now, please note that the admin account is the only person that can essentially install apps for the whole business, but individual users, brokers, etc., can still create their own for themselves. So you go to apps, you can create a new section if you want to segregate them, and you just click the plus. Now, you can either select from one of our templates, and these templates will be updated, changing, growing. There's more that we've got to install, or we can create a brand new one from scratch and you just give it a name, create, away you go. Now, for the purposes of this, I am going to open the one that I've pre-created, and it's just got a couple of things in there. It's essentially a blank form. And the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to touch on the structure of our forms and I guess some of the things that you might find in and around the form, not the actual form itself, in and around. So our forms are structured like folders. So you have your main page that I guess has everything inside. And then you can have pages inside of pages inside of pages to kind of structure how your questions go about. If you've ever seen one of the forms, we'll have like personal details, requirements, objectives, assets, liabilities, etc. Now, from the highest level, the only thing we can do is add pages. So I can add a new page. As you can see on the left-hand side, it's created a new page. I can rename it. But when we actually jump into the first page, we get a lot more options when we click on that plus button. So again, if I can just show that just to make sure it's clear. Oh, I've just jumped out of it. Good one, Liam. Already off to a great start. So the highest level, when we're clicking on the main page, you can only add pages. But if we go in to the folder, you can add a lot of the other aspects. So it's important to know that there is a structure to it. And to be honest, if you're unsure, ask us what the best way is to do the folder structure. You can kind of do it yourself, or we can help you out there. But it's just how it makes sense to you to put everything together, to format it in a particular way that makes sense. So we've got our design tool on the right-hand side. This is where we can change the colors, add logos, customize the look and feel. You can save them so that you can have different ones across the business. Like, for example, if you have different trading entities inside of the one business and you want to have them look and feel a different way, you can absolutely do that. At the very top, obviously, we're in the create screen now. We've got our live view. So if you click on that, you can actually go and you could do the form that you've done in a test environment. So it just allows you to kind of test the feel. You don't have the ability to chop and change like start halfway through the form at this point, but it just gives you that ability to test it, what you're doing. Under configure, this is where we can configure, I guess, every other element to the form other than the questions themselves. So for example, we can give it a name internally and a different name to your client so that it's a little bit, I guess you might call it, this application is for our loser clients, and you might not want the loser clients to know they're losers. Just as an example, don't obviously do that. That's a terrible idea. But there's an internal and external name to our apps. You can have them go into a particular folder by default, and then some of these you'll see, some of them you won't, because I've got admin access to, I guess, all accounts. But you can enable a review, and again, like it kind of explains here what it does. You can enable a review that allows for the clients to see everything at the end and just make sure everything's all good. Enable or disable automatically requesting documents at the end of the form. And I think, if you had integration with like bank statements or Ilion, there'd be a tick box here as well to enable whether that's enabled by default for your clients. don't just forget about the other stuff. You guys don't have access to that. It's only for the special people. So you also can configure notifications. So all the major milestones, you can configure the SMS and the email templates, and this is where you do it from. So everything from sending out the form, requesting additional information, documents, signatures, if you add a comment, and then what does that look like to the client side? So if I go into the request form, we can customize the SMS, subject of the email itself. Now, if you want to personalize it, like add elements that aren't static, like rather than saying hi there, you might want to say hi Liam based on the account that you're creating. The little question marks have all of our placeholders, and this will be worked on, guys. We actually had a chat only a week ago about making this a lot clearer for you guys, but these are all things that you can literally just copy and paste. So if I go, I want to grab the link and I want to use that, for example, in the email, I can just copy and paste that, and then that will be pre-filled with things that are relevant to that deal itself. So we've got options from the broker's name and the broker's details, or the user's details, to the actual client's name, signatures that we've designed, that's on your accounts. Have a bit of a play around with this, guys. You can also send yourself a test email to see what it looks like. But there's a lot of variables in there for you guys to play around with. So not only is it the major milestones, but you can also customize client reminders. So for reminding the form aspect, the document aspect, and signing aspect, how frequent they come out, how long before reminders just stop. And you can also turn reminders off if they're in a particular folder. So I might say that if a deal ever goes into the settled folder, it never sends a reminder. I just don't want that to be the case. And then you got your admin notifications. So this is not client facing. This is you facing. So you can get emails regarding activity that happens, like if they complete the form, documents, they've uploaded documents, etc. Whether there's a change in ownership or a team member's added, you can have automatic emails come out for that. Jason, those elements are just dragged into the template. They're not dragged. If you click on the question mark and you just highlight it, you can copy and paste. So I could just copy, paste, or paste. Ooh. Yeah, just Control C, Control V. I don't actually know why I can't right click paste. My browser doesn't support that. Go figure. Chrome is a stupid browser in this situation. But yes, it's just a copy and paste. We've also got our partial templates. So this is where, like, for example, I don't want to ask the whole form. I want to ask certain parts of the form. I can give it a name like smaller form, and then I can tick what questions I do and don't want to be asked. And of course, you can send a request out later for the whole thing, but this is where you can kind of just chop and change a little bit. I'm not going to dive too deep into this, guys, but if you want, we can do that in another session. And then there would also be a file upload, which there isn't here. There will be on yours. I think I might have done something in my backend, but you can also upload files that are relevant to be signed, credit guides, privacy consent, that kind of thing. So there's a section where you can just upload them and map them. In fact, what I'll do a separate video just to show that, because it's a little bit more finicky. Lastly, just to kind of tie off all the other elements of the form building, is the share. So all of our forms, chatbots, etc., all have a shareable function. So if I, for example, copy and paste this link, I don't have to get a request. I can just start the form myself, and then it'll ask me for my details like mobile, email, that kind of thing. And then I can just start the request myself. So this is a great place to have if you want to have on your website like an apply here, and then the client can just start the form themselves. Maybe it's on social media. Maybe it's not even a form. You might have like an annual review chatbot that you have on Facebook, and people can just interact with it without you having to do anything on your end. So these shareable links can be changed. You can add your own domain, like you could add one domain that has .mystro app in it, and then you can basically give it whatever page name at the end. You can call it whatever, or you can connect your own custom domain if you have one, and just talk to us if that's the case. So if I pause, that is a very just quick. You can go back when the recording comes out to just retouch on anything that you've missed. Can I just get a couple people saying, yes, that makes sense? Or did I completely lose everyone? Because I'm assuming that made sense. Great. Thank you, Jason. Appreciate it. I'll assume that everyone else feels the same way. So, guys, we're going to talk about the form now, and a lot of this is going to cross over with chatbots. So I'll show chatbots towards the end, but you can assume that everything I'm talking about now is applicable with chatbots as well. So we have a lot of different types of questions that you can add, and essentially, the way that we build our forms is modular. So every question, every page, every image, every document, everything is like its own module and can be placed wherever you want. You can even rearrange things like questions or pages or whatever just by dragging the 6 little dots. You can move them wherever. I'm going to show you, I'm going to group out the different types of questions that you can add in terms of categories, and hopefully that kind of makes a little bit of sense for you guys. So the first type of questions that we're going to highlight are questions. The first type is the thing that actually collects information from your clients. Now, I've got 5 different types here. So we've got our text input, and you can see the type at the bottom right, buttons, scale, street address, and this last one is autocomplete, but you'll see it change in a second. There was no errors, just it's a little bit different. Now, if I click on a plus, these things are kind of grouped in one place. Again, this is something that we would love to kind of really flesh out. And as our team grows, we'll absolutely be making this really, really simple for you guys to implement. But effectively, we've got text input, buttons, scale, street address, and autocompletes. They're all kind of in the same section. Now, the first one being text input. So this is like a free text, just a question. It can be as long or short as you want. If I have a look and I kind of describe how these modules work, every module has a label. So if I delete this, you can see that there's an add label. In fact, what I'll do, I'll create a brand new one from scratch. So everything has a label, and a label means we can point to it. And also a label is something that appears for you guys in Mystro. So for example, if I, let's say this was first name, and it doesn't need to be the whole question. It's probably better if it's just simplified. What is your first name? Now, this configure button opens up some options for the module. You can basically have different validation types, and this just means, do we want to restrict the information? Because it's free text, it could be anything. Do we want to restrict it to a certain type? So it could be free text, it could be a number, money, decimal, email, date, or mobile. Date should be applicable based on your account location. So it'll be either US or Australia, or whatever that's called. And just, yeah, so, if it's an email, mobile, you know what I'm talking about. So if I say, let's say, for example, I actually said mobile, and I said, what is your mobile? So I'm limiting to it's going to be a mobile format. I could put a placeholder in here. The placeholder is the grayed out text that appears. I could have that as being whatever I want. You can add something to kind of guide your customer in terms of what you're looking for. You can give it a you can give it a min length and max length. So, for example, mobile numbers, at least in Australia, are fixed. They're not going to be shorter or longer than 0411 777 10 digits. And yes, you just saw me count on my hands mobile number. Don't, It's all right. So a mobile number in Australia is not going to be more than 10 digits. An ABN, for example, won't be more than 11 digits. So if you wanted to restrict it, you can. You can also pre-fill it. So pre-filling is probably something that doesn't get used as much as what you possibly could. But one of the things, for example, is when you create a deal in Mystro, you're putting the client's name, mobile, and email into our system. So that's already captured. And if you don't want the client to have to re-enter it when they jump into the form, we can pre-fill it. So these yellow pluses add variables. So if I click on this, at the moment, we've got one option that, and I'll go into that aspect later, but there's a couple of different tabs. So you do have links in here and you can use those. Similar to the emails, these variables will fill with whatever it's holding that's applicable to the deal. But in this case, because we collect the first name, last name, email, and phone, we can actually pre-fill it. So when the client receives this, their mobile's already going to be in there. And that's really handy. And we can actually make this optional or not optional, depending on your form. So that's text input. What I'll do is I'll move on to buttons. So in the same way, button has a label. You've obviously got the question, and then you can customize the buttons. You can have as many buttons or as little buttons as you want. You can allow for multiple to be selected. You can have them as a different style, so larger or smaller. Again, you can pre-fill to have certain buttons selected. So I might say I want button 2 to be answered by default, and then the client can change it. But also, buttons have a special job where they can also have scores attached to them. So some of you might have thought about this before, maybe not, but a lot of the time when you have, for example, some smarts in the background, you might say, hey, Liam, could I automatically approve a deal if they meet certain criteria? Are they an Australian citizen? There's a point. Do they have higher than 100 grand income? There's a point. And so you can actually capture points based on buttons that they press. And then we can use those for formulas. Now, I'm not going to go into the formulas down the track, but just know that it is possible that in the background, we can actually compute, I guess, information or formulas based on buttons that they're pressing. Actually, it's very common in risk assessments. A lot of them have scores to answers that they provide. So there's an example. So that's buttons. Scale, very similar. Got a label. You can have a question. I haven't mentioned this yet, but you can also have a description, which is basically, it's just something that you can, it's just almost, if you had something like in italics below, like PS, keep this in mind, it just kind of allows for more context, but it looks visually different. And the client can actually provide a scale. Would you recommend me 1 to 5? I think this can actually go up to 10. So again, you can have it pre-fill with a certain amount. Low. I actually haven't played around with labels too much. Yeah, so you can give it a scale just in case you have those strange customers that they send you a review. I loved your service. I loved it. It was amazing. It was 1 out of 10. Yeah, okay. Well, let's make sure that doesn't happen. Let's give it a scale so they have an understanding. Address. So we basically connect directly with Google. So rather than them having to go, unit, address, street, state, etc., they can just provide it and we'll search it and pre-fill it for them. So again, you can also pre-fill this like all the other stuff, make it optional, etc. And then autocomplete. Autocomplete is actually very similar. In fact, I would believe it's the same framework as address, but it allows for you to help the client by pre-filling something else, selecting from a list of options opposed to just free text. So an example I'll give you is, let's say you said, which lender are you with? But you had 10 banks that you worked with and you didn't really operate with anything else. You can create a collection, and the client, as they type, it will, similar to address, it will show them the option as they type it. This is very helpful when like we're pushing data to your CRM, and it needs to be a very specific wording with capital letters, spaces, that kind of thing. It could be that you just want to select, for example, a bank from a list. Some people might say CBA, Combank, Commonwealth Bank, and you just want to simplify it to be the same thing for everyone. It's very easy to create your own collection. So if I click create, I get this, I guess, search field. And I kid you not, when the team showed me how to do this, I thought, wow, that makes it a lot easier, because otherwise you'd have to type them all individually. You can, well, not that. Let's do this. You can, on a spreadsheet, just have all the different options. You can literally just select them, copy, paste. You could have 100,000 rows, copy and paste, it's all in there. So if I called this banks, now if I go to type Commonwealth Bank, hang on. I think I might need to save it anyway. But yes, it would come with an option. So in terms of I guess modules that are client facing, where you're collecting data, those are the 5 different types that we have available at this very point. Can I pause and just say, does that all make sense? Did I go over anything too fast? Sorry, Jason, if I did. Is there anything that's kind of, I guess, questions that have popped up? Feel free to unmute and ask a question or put it in the chat. I'll just give you 10 seconds, and then if there's nothing, I'll move on. Lovely. I will move on. The next type are interactive types. So we have, I believe, 4 different types of interactive types. And now these are things that the client will well, go figure, interact with. So the first being a link. So you can have a link that actually takes them to something else. So if I actually go to configure, I can navigate to a URL, like they can go to a different website. I can actually take them to a specific question, or I can show a question and it will pop up in a little window. So I do believe that you can actually search for questions. And this is where the labels come in. The labels are really important because it allows you to reference things later. So if you're doing something in our builder, try to get into the habit of naming things, labeling things in a way that you can go, ooh, that's what I'm thinking of for later. So like, for example, if I go to here, example text input, I can actually show example text input. And the bold is the label, and the smaller text is the folder that it's in. So you can see here that question types is this one here. So kind of, if you, for example, have first name in both primary and secondary applicant, then you can go, no, I want the primary one or the secondary one, and you can point to whichever one you're actually referencing to. We use this very common to point people to like www.mycreditfile to get their free credit reports, as an example. You've got disclaimers. So disclaimers, well, a disclaimer is a disclaimer. You can basically have something that pops up that they need to read and agree to. So in the purposes of this, I can say, see our disclaimer. They click on the box. You acknowledge that I'm the best person you know. I agree. Great. I have it in writing now. Thank you very much for agreeing. And you can have whatever you want. It could be privacy policies, consent. This is not a signing aspect. So just keep that in mind, that it's more a pushing of a button consent opposed to anything else. We have got even situations where clients have got documents that pop up. that they agree and consent to. So there's a lot of flexibility around that. And if I actually create one, just so you can see, I'll just call it test. And the button I'll say is I agree. And it will actually guide at the bottom here. So I've added a button. I just need to click enter to save it. And then I add my disclaimer and I can put whatever in here. It can be as long as you want, really. And you can even point to variables. So you can actually have like things that are specific to the client appear in here. All right. So then we have signatures. Signatures are a bit of an interesting one. In my opinion, I'd say that we've got the minimum requirements, and there are certain things that are actually quite good, but we actually have a lot of stuff that we're bringing out in regards to signatures just to add more and more ability. So I'd say watch this space. But for a signature, we can either request it immediately, or it will send the client an email with the link so that they can sign it after the fact. So if it's immediately, the client can actually sign it while they're in the form. So it's very smooth and easy for them to go, great, yep, I agree, moving forward. And you've got an audit trail. Like we actually provide a digital certificate, so that for compliance, you've got that. It can be an inline signature, so actually signing on the page that is on the fact find. So yes, you can get the fact find actually signed while they're in the form, or you can do a PDF signature. And like I showed you before, where you can upload files, once you've uploaded them, you can select the file, and then it becomes available to the client. And you can choose that when they've signed it, whether it allows them to continue the form or it's finalizing and submitting. So a lot of the time, this will be at the very end, and that actually acts as a trigger to say, I'm done with the form, but you've got the choice. So that's signing. And then the last one in regards to our interactive modules is documents. Now, for us, we group documents in groups. So, as an example, I might say income docs. And again, this yellow field pops up. So I can actually take data from the deal to make it personalized. So I might put the client's first name in here just to personalize it and so that they know who I'm referencing. And you can have, payslip one. Not payslips, payslip one, payslip two. I don't know. Doesn't really matter what I'm calling it. You can add as many as you want. Like there's no limit. And so this group will appear nicely for the client in their portal. And when you go to configure, you can actually give it a description. So common example is for bank statements. Like when I was a broker, I like to make sure that people knew, hey, I need this to be within the last 30 days. If not, can you please make sure that you're also uploading an interim statement? Because sometimes the latest statement could be 6 months ago. So it's good to be able to give them clarity. You can even provide links, like if you're needing to provide like an income statement, hey, jump into MyGov as an example. By default, it'll always be the primary applicant, but you can select, like if you have multiple applicants, you can select who this is assigned to. And it can either be uploaded immediately, so they actually get presented on either the computer or their phone, a place where they can click and attach or take a photo, or it can be done after in the document portal. So for interactive modules, those are what we've got available at the moment. If I pause, how are we doing? If there's any questions that have kind of popped up, even like things that I haven't said that you would like to see, please either put something in the chat or just unmute yourself. Great. Thank you, Sharon. I appreciate that. All right. So we're going to then move on to visual types. Visual types are a little bit more, I guess there's not a lot. I mean, essentially, we've got messages. So messages are just something that can pop up. Like you might say, thanks, Liam, for you're doing great, keep going, kind of thing. Like it's not, you're not requiring any information, you're just presenting a message. These can actually appear as either just text like everything else, or we can actually have it appear as a bubble. So it creates a difference or a separation to the rest of the form. And again, the fact that it's green comes down to the design aspect. So if I look at design, we've got our agent bubble. So that appears down the bottom in design. We can have images. So if you wanted someone's face to appear, hey, this is me, I'm your broker, or I'm your financial planner or insurance broker or whatever, you can have that. We can also have videos upon request. It is something that does take a little bit of time to do, but we do have the ability. It's just we haven't spent the time to develop it easily for you guys to do, because there just hasn't necessarily been as much of a demand as what we'd probably need to actually put the time and resources behind it. So videos, images, and messages, they're our visual modules that you can implement into your form. Now, I know there's a couple of other ones. I'm not going to touch them at the moment. The last thing in regards to questions, I'm actually just going to just quickly reference my notes, because effectively, like we've got communication types like SMS and email, CMS, so like actually interacting with your Mystro account, changing owners, team members, adding tasks, adding notes, etc. That can all be done as a part of the form. Formulas, like honestly, there's some incredibly complex stuff that people have actually computing, like pre-approval outcomes, like hey, we've actually calculated that you can be approved, let's proceed. That can all be done through our formulas. I'm not going to jump into that unless there's a general consensus that you guys are happy for me to do that now, but it is a little bit more deep. But we're going to go back, and I'm just going to touch on rules and conditions, because that's a really powerful thing that Mystro does. And I think it's important that you guys have an understanding of how we do that, because it's really the thing that makes or breaks. No, sorry, it's not, doesn't make or break. It's the thing that really makes Mystro something that just you can't live without in your business. Because we ultimately can have one form to serve every purpose in your business, as long as the time is spent to develop it. And we're happy to work with you if that's the case. So I'm going to go back to our question types. So I'm going to show you just a couple of examples of how we can put this stuff together. I'm going to say that I'm going to collect a first name. What is your first name? And this is going to be free text. And I actually just, for the purposes of doing it the right way, I'm going to pre-fill it for from the, I guess, the name of the applicant. And I'm going to put a message down below. And I'm going to say, thanks, Liam. And the way that I do Liam is we've got this yellow plus. We can add stuff from we can add variables from the form. And variables will always appear in ones that have happened, not the ones that haven't. So, because we can't really reference something that hasn't happened yet. So it's always going to be in the form above. So I'm going to put in first, thanks, Liam. You're doing great. So when the client actually does this, it will say not thanks first, it will say thanks, Liam. And you can see over here in the fact that it's surrounded in dotted lines, it's a variable, it's going to change. And so this allows you to add ability to really personalize the form. For example, when we talk about getting details of like a second applicant, typically the primary applicant's doing it for the second applicant. So rather than saying, can you provide their mobile, you can say, what's your partner's first name? Sally. Great. Can you provide me with Sally's mobile number? Thanks. That's amazing. Does Sally have any kids, etc.? You can personalize it. So that's one of the first ways that you can utilize variables. The second way is a lot of you have forms that could be 600, 800 questions long. But like if you have a very simple person come through, they've got no debt, they've got no assets, they've got just basic income, they're just doing this on their own, they only might get asked like 50 questions max, and only get asked documents for a very simple asset and financial position. How do you do that? And so these three dots allow for you to add conditions to something. When will it appear? When will it be asked? This can be done for everything. All of our question types, our interactive types. Maybe you only want those people that say, I'm looking for a loan, but I have no income. And you show them an image of, are you a weirdo? I mean, funnily enough, I had a thought in our business. What if we had like 100 different conditions, and if someone randomly, they said that their name was John, and they're under the, they're less than 40 years old. What if they won an Easter egg? Or like they won a prize. Like this is one of the weird things that I was thinking of when I was a broker. But you can have things appear and disappear at will based on conditions. And so the way we do that is we reference things, and we reference things and say, when it's this, allow, or when it's this, don't allow. So if I actually open our rules, this is our rules panel. Now, for example, I'm going to do the basic way and then the more advanced way. And hopefully this makes sense. Please, if you want me to slow down, or if anyone wants to jump and give me a case example, let's do that. Because this is a big part of Mystro. So if there's no rules, then this is just going to appear, full stop. There's nothing around it. What if I want to say, I only want this to appear when first name, I could say equals something, doesn't equal. But to be honest, I don't want to present this unless I've actually collected a first name. So I'm just going to say I'm only going to present this if first name actually has an answer. Otherwise, I don't need to say it. So this question now will only appear if the client actually answers this. And you might go, well, Liam, why wouldn't they answer it? Maybe for some reason I made it optional. They don't have to answer it. So that is a very basic rule. Now, you can, when we go into the rules, you can have as many different rules as you want. And to be honest, if you actually look in some of your applications, when we get into the crux of things, it becomes very complicated sometimes. And so structuring the form becomes quite important, because not only can you add rules to questions, but you can also do it to pages. So for example, and it was only this morning that I was talking to a client about this. Let's say, for example, that we had a page and I called it dependents. And I had a bunch of questions in here about someone's dependents. Now I could go and add the rule only if dependence equals yes to all of them, or quite simply, I can just add the rule to the page, and nothing in the page will appear if that rule is met. So structuring questions in a way that you can simplify how you put the rules together makes a lot of sense. If I actually jump back into the rules, you can also turn on advanced mode. Now, I know this is going to sound weird because I'm quite capable with Mystro, but I kid you not, I didn't understand this until I started working for Mystro. I think 3 years I did this wrong, and our business pet was really suffered for it because I thought I understood it and I didn't. So we can add rule blocks. Now, I thought that rule blocks was, if anything's inside of it, it means that it doesn't work, like it doesn't activate. And that's not true. If anything, you understand that's not true. Don't make the same mistake I did. All it is just block. It's grouping something together. It's a block, a rule block. So an example might be that I want there to be 2 questions in here that maybe they equal one or the other, and I'll say that this rule will turn on if anything inside the block is true. But maybe I want the bigger picture to be that everything inside of the rule is true as well. So I can say that this rule has to apply, and everything in here, one of them has to apply. And then that gives us a lot of flexibility when it comes to setting up the rules. There's not really something we can't do with the framework that we've created. Now, I don't know about you. I'm a bit of a visual learner. And so I think that if any of you went, hey, I really want to know more about this, then I would encourage practical examples. Whether you can, I guess, unmute now, or we can do it a one-on-one. I will actually jump into an actual form and maybe show you a couple of examples, because I'd like to make sure that this makes sense. How am I losing anyone? Did anyone not get that? Please don't feel yep, lost you. You know what? Maybe after this, Jason, I'll think about whether or not I can put together some actual practical examples. And I guess this is why I wanted to create this app that you guys can import into your account. Because if I can create pages that have examples so that you can actually go, oh, okay, so if I do this and that, okay, that makes sense. Then hopefully that yeah, I thought it would. So let me jump into just one of our forms as an example. I definitely won't go into the complex stuff today. We'll do a part 2 for anyone that's interested, even if it's 4 or 5 of you. I find it to be quite fun. So, for example, this is where if I have a look at okay, so there's a question here that we ask: select 3 documents. Now, what if we only wanted to have a document group appear that only has those 3 documents in it? I don't want to have all 4. I just want to have the 3 that they've selected. It could be passport, Medicare and birth certificate, or driver's license, or whatever. Like, what if I just wanted to have those 3? And it's a little bit complex unless we do the rules right. So, to show you an example, I'll just use this one. So we've got a document group here that is driver's license, Medicare, and birth certificate. And if I have a look at the rules, this rule will only apply if each of these 3 variables equals these 3 documents. So if they've selected driver's license, birth certificate, and Medicare. If Australian citizen is yes, if they've said that they don't have a personal name, like we haven't collected a personal name, and we've collected a score because we've said that each document's worth only 1 point, we're looking for, is that question worth 3 points? All of these confirm or create a situation where we're very confident that this document group will only appear in a very, very restricted scenario. So, and to give you an example of something that I guess uses rule blocks, is sometimes, like, one of the problems that we had is, what if a client selects only 2 documents, or if they select 4 documents, and how do we then ask for the right thing and not have the system break? So in these examples, we've actually got almost placeholder document groups that will apply if none of the other ones apply. And in this particular example, all we're looking for is, are they a citizen, and do they have a previous name? And this will apply if any of these are true, not both, any of them. And is the score less than or more than 3? So, is it 1 because they only selected 1 document? Is it 2 because they selected 2, or 4? So this, for example, this way in which we've done documents for certain clients means that we're getting very accurate with the way in which we're asking for documents, and the rules are done in a way that it only happens if you want it to happen. And that is quite a complex example, but I guess at the end of the day, guys, this is more to spruik the juices flowing. Like I want you to know what's possible, because I can't just say it's all possible, because then you'll go, well, what the heck? What the heck does that mean? So, like I've got clients that have forms that serve asset finance, commercial, residential, SMSF, like it serves all purposes, and the only questions that are relevant actually appear. Like I've got some clients that might be on this call where they almost have like a pre-qualification where they collect a little bit later and the rest afterwards. And how do you make that really smooth and not having multiple different templates? It's all possible. So, and to be honest, the more you dive into it, the more you understand it. It's not that complex, but I know from the outset it will feel like that. But we're also here to help you guys. I'm more than happy to do one-on-ones, further sessions where we really dive in. Like we could create a form, a basic form from scratch together, and kind of walk that through and see if that can kind of help out. But if we stop there, I'm just checking my list. That's what I would call the basics. And if I go back to hang on, go back to the other template. So these other pages, I think I will definitely do as a separate, and I would say come if you're prepared to be challenged, because again, it's not that complex when you kind of get into it, but it is hard to make it easy. And to be honest, we're spending a lot of time to make it easier and easier. We've got actually a whole new builder that we've been working on for about a year now that actually does make things a lot easier, adding AI into the mix so that you can actually, for example, say, hey, can you create me a form for 2 applicants? Here are the questions that I need you to ask, and I only want this to apply if, like taking natural language to then build these forms for you. So that's something that we're playing around with. That won't be ready for a while, but we are working to make these things easier for those who actually want to jump into it. So if I pause there, does anyone have any last questions? Any scenarios that they want to walk through? You can even ask a request now, and we'll book a time to, like, I'll send you an email. We'll book a time to jump into doing something for your business. But is there anything that didn't make sense that anyone needs further clarity on? Or would you say, with enough time to process, this was a good starter? I'll just give 10, 15 seconds, see if anyone's got anything.
Hey, Liam,
Most of you stuck around, which is very appreciative. And hopefully this, you guys got something out of this. All right. I'm going to assume that there's no questions, or you'll send an email afterwards if there's anything that anyone wants to follow up on. So, guys,
Liam,
great. We're 5 minutes early, which I'm glad. I'm gonna edit this recording, put it onto our YouTube channel. I'll send out an email probably tomorrow with a follow up, so that if you guys want to go back and look at anything. Oh, who has a question, Sharon? I did
Me?
not. Eleanor? Eleanor's
can you hear
being
me?
called out in the chat. Oh, wait, I haven't had my headset on that entire time. Can you hear me, Eleanor?
I can hear you, yeah. Can you hear me now?
Can anyone else hear Eleanor? Oh, that's awkward. Hang on. What's going on? Don't say anything. Select a speaker. Eleanor, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh my goodness. See, I asked you guys, can you hear me? But I couldn't hear. Can I just confirm no one has spoken through this entire thing and I've just cut them off, have I?
No.
No, good.
No,
okay,
we've all been in the chat.
All right, Eleanor, what's your question?
I can't remember exactly what you guys have called it in the form builder, but there's milestones or
Yes, flags.
something like that,
Yep.
flags, progress stuff.
Yep.
Um, what I'm thinking about wanting to be able to do, and this might be under the bucket of more detailed, more complex. Let's come back to it another
Yep.
time. Um, the basically we have a range of essential questions
Mm-hmm.
and a range of general questions,
Mm-hmm.
like optional ones. Um, and those need to be kind of presented slightly differently to clients versus when we're reviewing things internally. Um, and then I would like to be able to build some automations around flagging
Mm-hmm.
somehow when the mandatory bits have been provided versus just the optional extras. And there's probably some a midway tier of questions in there as well. Um, could you give a bit of an overview of those progress flag bits? I can't remember. You literally just said it, and I can't think what you called them.
Yes.
Um,
So
and how those can be used.
yeah. So look, I'll give a sneak peek in terms of, because this will be in I'll do this in another video, in another training session.
Okay.
But essentially, like if I'm looking at our CMS options, like we can create a contact. We can change the title of the deal, move to a folder, add a file note, add a tag, start a workflow, team member, change on a checklist task, right? It's a bunch of different options in there. In fact, what's funny is that what should be in there is the form stage, which is not. So anyway, it's in a different section. But
Mm-hmm.
you can have a stage. Now I might call this start. Now this doesn't appear to the client, but it's a milestone that we can record. Now we have clients that use this for automations. So, I only want something to happen once a client meets this particular point. A really great example is, and it's not your example, but maybe it's an example that everyone else might kind of get a bit of an understanding of. But let's say, for example, you send out a deal and the client never opens it. Like you've sent it, but maybe you want to have like an automatic reminder email, but you don't want that email to happen if they have opened it. So how do you do that? If that stage is at the very start and it only triggers once the clients answer the first question, like you can have a rule that says first question is any answer, then you've now got a way that you can capture whether someone's actually logged in or not. And you can then customize your email notifications or SMS to be very specific to, I can see that you haven't logged in yet, and let's do something about that. So in your particular example, you could assign a form stage to a bunch of questions, and only when those questions are answered, it triggers some sort of internal note or something that, essentially allows you guys to act on the data that's been provided without having to wait until the form is completed, like all at the end. So you can absolutely do that. And maybe if we're going to do this advanced training session, maybe what I'll do is I'll get some interest beforehand, collect a couple of case studies that you guys are interested in, and I can actually put together some examples and we can walk through how to create those together. Because I think, like Jason was mentioning, it's probably easier to see how you do it opposed to just talking about it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Lovely. Okay. So yeah,
Awesome.
so
Thank you.
so I'll look, guys, tomorrow I will send through an email with the recording so that if you've got any staff that maybe is interested, send it through to them. I'll also ask for a poll in regards to who's interested in the advanced training to go into a lot more of the complex stuff and get some case studies, because I think seeing is going to be a lot easier than just talking about it. And I don't know if we'll do that for the next one, but we'll definitely do it within the month. So in terms of within a month, so it'll probably be mid-October for that one. But of course, we're here as a one-on-one as well. If you can't wait that long and you want to talk about stuff earlier, please reach out. But if that's oh, Michelle said, "Hey Liam, if I clone the current form I have to play with a bit and see how it works, how do I get to the creative live view configure share screen?" You need to be the admin, Michelle. But I can see if I can just make sure that that's something that you have available to you. So I'll if you can send me an email to support at mystro.com.au. That way I've just got your account details. I can sort that out for you. Is that it? No one else? No last funny jokes, thoughts? Perfect. All right. Well, guys, very much appreciate you sticking around this long. Hopefully, this was helpful. Always happy for a follow up. If you've got any feedback, please send it through. Hopefully, this gives you guys a little bit more context in terms of what we do. It either equips you or gets some thoughts going in terms of what you can do in your business. So, I will love you. I will leave you. And I'll see you guys in the next one.